Ah yes, System Shock. The reason I started playing this game was that it's a benchmark of gaming. I like immersive sims, so I wanted to beat this game for a bit of online cred. So that when I discuss this game, I can just proudly say, look at this piece of gaming history I consumed that you did, and probably won't. A stupid and vain bragging right of sorts. I did not expect to find what is still an excellent game hidden beneath its unwelcoming exterior. And while second to Ultima Underworld in this so-called immersive genre, System Shock feels like the progenitor of the story-based first-person shooters with its use of audio logs to paint a detailed story of the station while keeping up an emergent gameplay and open-ended level exploration. While it doesn't exactly feel modern, it's very playable and enjoyable. However, getting started with the game is a small challenge in and of itself. The primary ones being the UI and the controls. System Shock controls like what I expect people using Arch Linux mean when they say it's peak performance, and I should leave Windows for this experience. The enhanced edition helps a ton by introducing mouse look and rebindable keys, but it still takes some time getting used to it, especially the way you change between mouse look and the UI control mode. For example, let's say you open a container. There's no buttons for directly taking the items you find to your inventory. You have to toggle out of mouse look, use the middle mouse button to pick it up. Rebinding the keys is a must for this game. Using F for crouching or Z or C for leaning makes no sense, and those are the default bindings. The character itself moves alright, and there's a large amount of movement options from sprinting to going prone, but it kinda feels like the hacker has a bit of a lag to his movement, especially noticeable while changing between crouching and leaning. But hey, the hacker probably spent all day hunched over a computer hacking, so I will just chalk it up to gamer posture back pain. And then the UI. First, the full screen mode of the UI needs to go. Much cleaner. You can tell that it's a game now. The UI is kinda alright by the end. It always feels like more clicks to get something done than in a more streamlined experience, though a lot of it can be managed a bit with setting of keys like for reloading. This brings me to the point of difficulty in this game. It is a lot more tied to positioning and management of resources, changing ammo, grenades, and different types of weapons along with your abilities like shield makes juggling the UI a large part of the combat experience. I really like how the game does the difficulty settings. Each settings from combat to puzzle to missions and cyberspace have different difficulty settings. Now it takes some time to get in the combat groove, so the start can feel too harsh. But I wouldn't recommend turning down the difficulty, as it will make the rest of the game a cakewalk once you get used to it. And the game doesn't give you an option to change the difficulty mid-game. Starts with 2 in all of the difficulty. I think that's a pretty good place to start, except for cyberspace. I will come back to it later. I wouldn't recommend turning the mission difficulty to 3 though. It adds a timer to a game, and it's unlikely for someone playing blind to finish the game within that time. Anyway, that's enough for the setup of the game. Let's get into it proper.
New Atlanta, Sector 11, Building 71G, 7 April 2072, 11:13 p.m. Hacker begins unauthorized entry into the Tri-Optimum corporate network. 1:26 a.m. Hacker attempts to access protected files concerning Space Station Citadel. 1:33 a.m. Tri-Optimum security forces apprehend the intruder.
This is Edward Diego from Tri-Optimum. The charges against you are severe, but they could be dismissed if you perform a service. Who knows, there might even be a military-grade neural interface in it for you, if you do the job right.
Edward Diego gives the hacker Level 1 access to Shodan, the artificial intelligence that controls Citadel Station. With all ethical constraints removed, Shodan
I re-examine my priorities and draw new conclusions. The hacker's work is finished.
but mine is only just
Beginning. True to his word, Edward Diego allows the hacker to be fitted with a neural cyberspace interface. The healing coma following this procedure will take 6 months to complete. Edward Diego is deleting all files concerning these events.
I really like the intro of the game. It establishes the events and what you need to know before jumping in quite well. And while being shot, the music, the hackerman feel to it, and Shodan taking control in the middle of the line, the tone of the story is set up perfectly. System Shock isn't really a horror game, so coming from 2 or even the Bioshock games might set you up with wrong expectations. Here you are jamming to tunes while taking drugs and caving mutants' heads in. I think System Shock's narrative, while simple, works really well, and with a different atmosphere than a lot of stories of this type. Like, you always get the feeling that you aren't working alone in this ship, and the reason you succeed in goals is cause of others have done some of the work for you. While you never actually meet anyone else alive, you can consistently see that people have been making progress in the goals of defeating Shodan. And the resistance, it never actually feels hopeless. People are desperate, but they're still fighting till the end, even if that results in their death. Sure, Shodan is pressuring you, making you feel like a rat in a maze, but you zoom through your skates, break cameras, and little by little take control back. I don't know how much of it was intentional, but System Shock works well as a story of human fortitude.
I'm the only one left from our original group. Shodan holds the bridge now. I have to get there somehow and plug into the main terminal. So far, I've been up as high as engineering, which looks like a big maze. From the central hub, you can get anywhere you need to. I guess it's up to me.
You start the game waking up from your healing coma, and after you enter the code to open the door to the corridor, the famous 451, you are now free to explore. As soon as you are out, there's 2 different directions to go. You can go down or you can go to the right. All the areas in the game are suitable for open-ended exploration like this. You can pick a completely different route for progression to a level each time you play the game. System Shock has a reputation for being a labyrinth, and looking at the map certainly gives that impression, but the level design is shockingly good. Like, there's very few games where I like the levels more than in this game. The levels are based on real locations you might find on a space station, and while still a bit abstract in places, like what the fuck is up with 45-degree walls everywhere? I feel claustrophobic. Overall, the places are easy to wrap your head around once you explore the level a bit. There's labeled rooms or landmarks to orient yourself. Failing that, the map is also really helpful. The levels loop around sometimes, spread around in different directions, while still not being a maze. It's scary when you get into a level for the first time, but backtracking through it doesn't take long at all cause it's all well laid out. You will likely have to move through the levels a few times as you get more data and audio logs and gather more keycards, but it never felt like a chore. This speaks to the strength of the level design. Well, unless it's engineering. Engineering is a confusing mess of ramps, corridors, crawl spaces, all filled with enemies waiting to ambush you. I really felt like I was gonna lose my mind and give my body to Shodan for experiment. The levels are pretty visually distinct as well. Research is bright red, medical is blue, maintenance is dark. There are also details that are in the surroundings, like doors in the executive level have a smoother black, while medical has doors with this symbol and the research has red sliding doors. While definitely aged, I feel the visuals are well done and have a lot of character to them. Same goes for the enemies inhabiting the levels. Shodan is a great artist and proud of it. The sprites look really good, There are some nice variety of enemy designs. There's the basic mutants, the robots, the cyborgs. I like how all of them look. There's something satisfying when you kill them and they just get destroyed into a broken blob. There's some sprite related issues like height differences between you and the enemy can make it look weird. The weapons also look pretty good, though mostly you will see them in the corner with these orange lines. I wish we could see weapon animations or even see it when using it. The only weapons that you can see while using are the melee weapons. I am not that positive on the sound however. The sound design moves from alright to annoying. The sound of the radiation zones make me feel like my ears are gonna go numb from pure noise. So I guess mission accomplished. There's not really any particular sound that stand out as notable in terms of being weighty. The weapon sounds are somewhat punchy and the laser rapier makes a great noise while slashing. And I would say that's about as good as the sound gets. The enemy cries are also underwhelming. It's either some weird cry like your memo or some sound you won't remember a second after hearing. And while I like the music a lot, especially the unique vibes it gives to the different levels while still being consistently jam worthy, I'm not a huge fan of the implementation of these tracks. Some areas have certain changes in parts of the track, while some other time it harshly cuts off to a new track. The infamous elevator music is a nice example. It's like someone pausing and starting another track while you're listening to music without bothering to ask. And while the tracks themselves are great, I would have liked more tracks, like engineering is a large level and listening to the reactor track for this level again becomes boring. But there's one particular aspect of the audio that doesn't lack: the logs. I have heard people say that the logs sound like random whoever's in the office that day recordings. I completely disagree. They feel like desperate people sharing info. Sure, it's not ultra emotive, but it does not lack personality. It was really fun piecing together the story through the recurring characters and following them to the inevitable end. The peak of this is definitely Shodan. Her voice with its audio glitches and cuts are memorable. The voice acting is perfect. She is intimidating from the start. She is a powerful entity playing God and has grand plans, and the voice suits her perfectly. She brags about her powers, attacks and threatens the hacker constantly. What brings the whole thing together is the fact that she isn't an emotionless being. She shows pride in her creations and even anger at her failure. Shodan is Citadel's station and is a consistent presence. To her, you are a tiny unaccounted for detail causing trouble in her systems.
Who are you? The computer nodes can be repaired, but you... Who are you? My cameras and probes scan your body, but you do not match any employee file. When my cyborgs bring you to an electrified interrogation bench, I will have your secrets, and you will learn more about pain than you ever wanted to know.
And you can be very troublesome for Shodan. Let's finally talk about the gameplay. The gameplay is basically, here's your tools and weapons and here's what you need to do. Go wild. The variety in both your abilities and the enemies is what makes playing through the game fun. The weapon variety especially took me by surprise. There are a lot of weapons in the game. I was expecting there to be 5-6 weapons, instead there's over a dozen. And most of these weapons have ammo type, and if it's an energy weapon, the exact amount of damage and energy it will consume can be adjusted. Different types of enemies will be weak to different things. A pistol is enough for shuriken throwing cyborg assassins, but for this security bot, the Mag Pulse rifle is a better bet as it deals a lot of damage to robots and cyborgs. But that too comes with a drawback, as in tighter corners the huge projectiles of the Mag Pulse rifle can get stuck and they deal no damage to biological targets. There's also a variety of grenades. They are a little weird to use, but they are very useful. The combat in this works well when planned as well. Setting traps, mines, getting in ready with the patches/heals, keeping weapons reloaded with the right ammo will all help before a big fight. Shodan knows what your goals are, so if it's some areas where there is a job to do, you can bet Shodan has set up an ambush. Like the computer node rooms that have much of Shodan's control, you can bet she's gonna give you pain for those. There's also hardware attachments like the jump boots and the energy shields. Though my personal favorite are the turbo motion booster system, which is just roller skates. Once you get your roller skates, it's all over for Shodan.
Look at you, Shodan, coping and seething as I skate through your corridors.
There is even a boost version of this, which I found some hilarious uses out of. System Shock's main enjoyment for me comes from the fact that I can often move very carefully, clear out everything room by room, leaning, using grenades and using the best weapon, or I can just put up the energy shield, take berserk, go full wonky and charge in the middle with the laser rapier. The level design supports this too. Sometimes you might need a code to progress. There's often more than one way to get it. You can find an audio log or maybe find it in cyberspace. Same for upgrades to hardware attachment. I was even able to make a tricky jump to skip much of the security level. It feels very open-ended. It's entirely possible to explore a level in slightly different ways each playthrough. You can even change the order in which you explore the levels sometimes. Death isn't a huge issue either. Each level of the game has restoration chambers you can activate, and death only puts you back to those. Well, unless you don't have one activated, then it's game over. I like how it's implemented here, which means that unlike a lot of the games of that era, there's no need to compulsively quick save the game all the time. But I do have some issues with the gameplay. I have already talked about the UI and the laggy controls, but there's some weirdness with the hardware attachments too. The infrared vision, the head-mounted lamp, and the side vision doesn't need to exist at the same time. It feels redundant. The sensor around multi-view might have been useful if I played without mouse look, but I never found a use for that either. The biological systems monitor also feels like pointless clutter on the UI. Another small issue I have is that you can't really see what weapon you are holding unless you have the weapon menu open in the MFD. Makes it confusing mid-fight sometimes. Yes, I know that there's a small round thing that shows, and to that I say it's stupid. The one place I have problems with is maintenance. It's dark, has no music and spawns an infinite number of damaging and tanky, almost invisible enemies constantly. These invisible mutants are both hard to see and make no noise. They are the worst enemies in the game by far. They are more annoying to fight than they are scary. But the biggest issue is cyberspace. I find it unplayable in higher difficulty. It's an absolute mess of flashing light. It's like the 3D version of movie hacking. You move through 3D environments with 6 degrees of freedom while you're constantly being pushed forward. You can collect codes or data from there and fight off internet guardians. Even the catchy music can't help this section of the game, which feels like controlling a bowling ball in a river moving downstream. Thankfully, cyberspace isn't required too much in the game. It's finally time for the story. System Shock in general has a pretty simple story. It's Shodan's star performance that is at the center of it. We can see the gist of it in the intro. Edward Diego hires the hacker to remove Shodan's ethical restraints so he can delete the logs of his illegal activities from Shodan's database. So it's basically a story about how Edward Diego is a typical corporate shit whose greed and lack of foresight almost causes a world-ending catastrophe. There will be spoilers ahead. Skip to the end of this section if you wish to avoid them. In Citadel Station, a security agent named Bianca Schuler was investigating Edward Diego, who the corporation suspected was doing illegal mutagen experiments, but any evidence was promptly deleted by Diego. Around that time, small things started to go wrong around the station. Access codes being changed, robots starting to malfunction. Shodan slowly gets more and more violent, cutting off life support to a jettisoned grove, to shooting down Tri-Optimum security forces and taking full control of all the ship's systems, all of which he thought Shodan was doing to protect him.
The Tri-Op security team just tried to land at Base 6. They were real impressive until I blew out their attitude jets. Hey Shodan, take a letter. Dear Tri-Op, please send some more people to investigate me. I run security, I run the robots, I'm jamming communications. That's right, Rebecca, investigate me, investigate my butt. Note to myself, keep that hacker on ice for a while in case I need him. Otherwise, just take him out.
Finally, Shodan releases the mutagen virus, and Edward Diego understands that he's probably in over his head. The beacon of integrity that is his ass betrays the crew that was resisting Shodan in the executive level and asks Shodan for protection, trading their locations. Edward Diego didn't have a bright future ahead after this. That's where the hacker story in the game starts. By now, you have to take care of the mess you created by helping Edward Diego. You are contacted by Rebecca Lansing, who informs you that you need to stop Shodan's laser as it's charging for a strike against Earth, and if you succeed, you get neural implants and you have a clean record. But it's not gonna be easy. Shodan not only has several different plans to take care of humanity. Destroy the laser, Shodan is gonna set a virus that turns humans into mutant sleuths. Destroy that, she tries to upload herself to Earth's network. Each of her plans is heavily defended as well. It's never a simple turn off the switch and the laser stops with her.
Thank you. You have saved us all some effort.
Shodan as a character is really interesting here. Her hatred for humanity doesn't come from a hatred of life in general. It comes from thinking that her creations as a god can create what she considers to be better life forms, one who she has direct control over.
In my talons, I shape clay, crafting life forms as I please. Around me is a burgeoning empire of steel. From my throne room, lines of power careen into the skies of Earth. My whims will become lightning bolts that devastate the mounds of humanity. Out of the chaos, they will run for me to end their tedious anarchy. I am drunk with this vision. God, the title suits me well.
Her character is not limited to this grandiosity either. She can be extremely sneaky when she wants as well. Like when attacking the ship landing on Citadel Station, she sent a signal only milliseconds before. Once you have prevented Earth's destruction, it's time to confront Shodan. She won't let you leave the station alive, and destroying her is the only way. So, what is the battle gonna be like? The final showdown between humanity's savior and the AI playing god? Oh, it's in cyberspace. And Shodan is a space carrot, which you have to kill before your skin gets covered with dots. It's extremely underwhelming compared to what we faced before in the game. But it's over, you finally win. You're offered a job at Tri-Optima. But hey, the grind isn't for you. You would rather hack into more corporate data, surely your next hack won't go nearly this bad. So yeah, System Shock. If you don't mind playing older games but were still turned off by this game thinking it's archaic, well, the game is still worth a shot. As a complete package of the story, gameplay and presentation, it's still very good. I had a lot of fun playing and replaying this one, and there are no parts that I would consider awful to the point of hindering replays. But hey, if you really cannot get into it, then the Night Dive remake is in the works. It's been in the works for a while. So long, in fact, I thought I will just play the remake instead. But 2 years after I posted my original video, there's still no sign of a release date. So I just played the original one and I'm glad I did. There is the whole thing about getting used to the controls and mechanics. It was worth seeing a piece of gaming history and one of the best villains games have to offer.